what if we put this policy direction and it's being requested, then it will mean that the council cannot choose to impose a restriction on any particular centre.
If the purpose is to support the central city as the principal centre.
Yeah, for that, exactly. And I think it's much more appropriate that that be dealt with, as you say, on a site-by-site, case-by-case basis. Because the other part of this issue, which this submission doesn't raise, is that there's also an issue, and it's, I suspect, relates to the centre that this comment was related at, which is that some of our centres are also close to our neighbouring districts like Waimea and Selwyn, and that in some cases there are existing restrictions on some of those centres to ensure that they don't get to the point that the larger centres in our neighbouring districts that are also supposed to be key activity centres aren't undermined to the point that they no longer can operate as key activity centres. So you have to be very careful about putting a very specific and blanket policy approach as is being suggested in this case.
Yep. Vicky, then Phil.
So can I just get big picture stuff on our current thinking about suburban key activity centres and all those things? How much of people's daily requirements can be or should be able to be served within their local area, within their local key activity centre? And why would they need to come to town?
I haven't looked at that sort of detail. That's again a level of detail that's will be much more relevant to the commercial chapter where we set out, where we take this hierarchy and take it further in terms of deciding, okay, exactly where should these centres be, how much land should there be, and things like that.
Okay, so take that hierarchy.
Yep.
If you live near a big shopping centre, say a Riccarton or a Palms or whatever, how much would you reasonably expect, if the district plan was working well, that you could do by walking or commuting to your local area, and remembering that how key that is in resilience as well, and that each of those needs to be able to be self-sustaining in the event that neighbouring areas are out. So what are we thinking in terms of people's ability to sort of get by in terms of the big centres and the small centres?
So is the question how much floor area
No. Would I be
Just
able
what activities would you expect to be able to walk to or cycle to or jump on a bus to?
The small local centres that are being proposed in the plan would provide for whatever. I mean, there's no limitations in terms of the nature of the activities. It's the provision at that local level is very much on the basis of the amount of land that's provided.
Let me put it the other way. So I live near Riccarton. I can actually meet my lawyer, my accountant. I can see 7 coffee shops and whatever else, and I can go to 4 supermarkets. Why would I need to come into the city? Actually, like, what compels me in the district plan to, like, we're talking about the central city as having primacy, but why is anybody going to come here, actually?
I think that's a really big question, but I think it's a combination. Yes, but it's a combination of things, because I think ultimately the central city will be where you will have, and this is already what the central city plan is indicating. It will have things like the law courts, government departments. It'll have things.
Well, just because you don't go there very often.
It'll have things.
That's right.
Yeah, it'll have things like the entertainment precinct and things like that. So there will be things that you only ever have one of, and the sensible place to put that is in the centre of the city. And so you end up with an agglomeration of these sorts of one-off activities, and also to give the city a heart, I think, is.
I understand the thinking. I'm just not sure of process.
No, it's not, and that's the thing. I think that the issue, and it is a bigger issue for the council as a whole, is that I guess our experience has taught us that for a resilient city, that you actually do need to have you actually do need to have things that are essentials located closer to your community. But I think that what I'm hearing you say is that the plan's not directive in that regard. It is only really trying to encourage those big ticket items that are really there for, like one-off for the whole city, that we'd rather that they were in the CBD and pulling people into the centre to create a vibrant and exciting. And I agree with all of that. I think that that's absolutely right. I think perhaps the original indication that we would have a lot of the commercial back into the CBD is, people are actually getting accustomed to living and working in close proximity to each other, and that's the resilience argument that I think is starting to populate the discussion rather than a desire to push everyone back into the CBD.
You're quite right. In recovery and redevelopment, I mean, we are in a different phase now where the central city's not there, and there is going to be a time when things will come back there. It's a matter of over time, but perhaps another way to look at it is areas of influence or distribution around the various sizes of the centres. So we expect everybody should be able to walk to some shop somewhere, be it a key activity centre or a local neighbourhood shop for their bottle of milk and their loaf of bread. We expect that to be able to be accessible to everyone. And then around the key activity centres, they have a wider area of distribution that they provide for. But the central city is not only for Christchurch, it's also for Waimak and Selwyn. They consider the central city of Christchurch to be their significance for their own districts as well.
They can pay for some of it then. Right. Phil?
I'm just not sure that, having things decided on a case-by-case basis is actually going to work, especially say over the next 2 years and down Lincoln Road, and because of the impact of a whole lot of new workplaces, the impact on transport, particularly in congestion on what was traditionally a very small area, and I just can't help think that if it continues the way it is, we're going to need some kind of directive in the plan, because there is. This is a stage, it's a transition stage, and what's happening currently, for example, doesn't seem to be enough to manage it. And that is not a criticism of all the excellent work, say, that's been done in the area on transport. There's been some great stuff done, but is this enough? Is this plan enough to manage this?
This is the point, that it's, and 3.2.3, a city in transition. We are a city in transition. And in a way, expecting a district plan that will be speaking in the present tense from here on in is not the solution to the transitional problems that we're confronted with. And in a way, I think we might be expecting the district plan to be doing more than what we should be organising as a city on a transitional basis, because it does strike me that transport, so parking, the means of getting around. I worry about the fact, and I think I've said it before, that I'm worried that community boards have the power to simply restrict parking where we've got like an Avonhead again, where we've got that airport park, which is not associated with the airport, but it's called that, where they've got, a whole government department located out there, or more than one, which has resulted in residential streets becoming car parks, and I don't think that the tools have been there to really manage the transition. And I think that's the point that you're making, and maybe that's something that we need to be thinking about, not just as part of the district plan review, but separate from that, what transitional arrangements can we as a council put in place to help people transition from the present state to the future state. And we think about the district plan as the future state, but think about what we could be doing in the meantime, because I'm sure there are adjustments that we could make on a temporary basis, and they fit with the model of recovery. And I believe that we could approach the Minister again and say, look, we need to have an order in council that gives us a transitional, look and feel to transport management plans or something like that. I mean, gosh, I think everyone would be really happy after yesterday if we had transitional transport management
Transitional
plans.
planning is definitely an issue that has come up between Sarah and officers of Sarah and this council, and there are things that can be done outside of the district plan. The district plan only represents a regulatory plan.
Yes.
There's a lot of other things that can be done.
Yeah, so maybe we need to pick that up as a separate issue and come back to that. Paul?
I mean, I'm fully behind the transitional project, as you know, and I think they are really, really important. I just would like to caution everybody to think that when you set up something transitionally, it does develop patterns. And I'll give you the example of Restart. Now, Restart, their initial spot for Restart was going to be in the Waltham Steel Sheds, believe it or not, because it was going to be tied to the World Cup. The issue around that is it would have changed exactly what people were doing and how it went. So we believe that it needed to come back to the centre. So when we're actually putting transitional projects in, they should be relevant to the long term. Otherwise, we will change people's patterns and they will get locked in. Like alcohol, to the extent that it is down in Victoria Street, it's developed a pattern where it's going to have adverse effects, and it will be ongoing. Psychoactive substances, if it doesn't get banned nationally, it should do, but anyway, locking into certain areas, it will cause problems, and I think it is going to be very mindful of that. So I am behind it, but we do need to think that where we place transitional stuff relates to what we want long term.
Yeah. Yanni?
I think it's a really interesting conversation about centralisation versus localisation, and actually I think post-earthquake people really wanted to localise rather than centralise. But part of the problem, as I see it, is that it's the affordability. People cannot afford to come back into the central city because of the blueprint. So the ability for creative businesses, for small and medium businesses, does not exist in our central city.
But that's not
So
the
they
district
need
plan.
somewhere to
That's
go.
not the district plan reviews
Well, it is, because
function.
if we constrain space in the suburbs where those businesses can go, and we don't provide space for them, then what happens? We get a central city that's full of government departments and banks that is not particularly attractive, not particularly desirable, and doesn't really meet the function of a population that we want to be a creative, enterprising, dynamic group. So, I do think there is a wider issue that we need to discuss around, maybe what we should be doing is limiting the office development in the central city to a smaller area, because what we've got a donut effect happening around the outside of the central city because the core has been blocked off for so long. And I just think there must be a capacity issue. We get to a critical juncture at some stage where we have too much office spread around the city and actually no more will happen.
I think what you're hearing is that the need to integrate the Christchurch Central Recovery Plan into this plan in a far more joined up way. And I think we're hearing it around the accessible city chapter around transport, needing to link across to the wider transport. And I think that some of the feedback from the combined government groups would indicate that similar use of language would be helpful as well. So maybe that is a task of work that needs to be done so that we can see the integrated whole when we're actually dealing with when we submit it through. If we can get that right, then I think, and again, there might be the odd thing that's in the Central City Recovery Plan that the Minister might like to revisit as part of this. And maybe that we could be using the feedback process where they get to comment on it to actually tease out what it is, like this difference between the Central City Recovery Plan and the LERP in relation to preferring one over the other.
Madam Chair, certainly it is the intention to bring the CCRP, the Central City Recovery Plan, into the district plan, but we will be restrained somewhat because it's a recovery plan as to what we can change in it.
Yeah, I know,
So it
I know,
does-
but
it does
that's
need
what
to
I'm
come
saying
into the
is that
plan.
a simple conversation in the context of trying to create some consistency across our planning processes and the need to build the vibrancy in the centre of the city, which we're all for. And, you know, I think that what you're hearing around the table is that there's a real desire to kind of
Absolutely.
make that happen. But so are there tools within our district planning process that actually the minister would like to access in order to just, you know, I don't know, I feel like using that word turbocharge, but you know, if we could turbocharge the CBD, then a lot of the debate won't be.
I suspect some of the tools that you're talking about are outside of the district plan review.
Yeah.
However,
But some of them are.
some of them, and we've yet to start that work. But indeed, the discussion that you're talking about and the relationship between the central city and the rest of the city does need to occur, and that CCRP will come into the district plan. We've yet to have those discussions because that's part of the second stage, but we need to get on to those discussions about what can happen between the two agencies.
All right. Well, look, I'm just going to call a break for 10 minutes so we can grab a cup of tea and so. No. I wouldn't mind a real coffee. Anyway, so we'll get back at 3 o'clock. Long black.